I should be dead. I should actually be dead right now. All the stats, all the odds, all the likelihood, I shouldn't be here right now talking with you. And maybe that's why I just love the idea of being alive so much, because to me, being alive is being free. A simple walk with my dog Hunter in the grass, a simple motorcycle ride in the mountains. Gosh, I love it. Because I shouldn't be here right now. I should have been dead. Let me take you back to a time when I wasn't so alive and I didn't feel so free. As a kid, I was smart and active. I was a superstar lacrosse player. I was always outside, throwing a football, tossing a frisbee, shooting hoops, kicking the soccer ball. You name it, I was doing it. In the summertime, I'd go sailing, water skiing, play tennis. And when it came time to do schoolwork, I would zip right through it and I would get great grades. I grew up with two very loving parents and two amazing older siblings. And I went to private school in New Haven, Connecticut. And because I went to Hopkins, my vacations were different. So on Wednesday, January 2nd, 1991, my friend Armand and I decided to go snowboarding. I was snowboarding, he was skiing, but we'll just say it was snowboarding. He slept over the night before, so we woke up bright and early, and it was a cold and dark and dreary day, middle of winter, in Connecticut. We put on our warm clothes and we packed our gear in the car, and my mom drove us 55 minutes to Powder Ridge. Powder Ridge is not what you'll find in Vermont. It's not what you'll find in Colorado. But we didn't care. We were 13, in 8th grade, about to spend a full day on the mountain. Didn't matter. We were happy. On our way there, we missed the exit. So we had to drive around for another 10 or 12 minutes. Same thing, 8th grade, Christmas vacation, who cares? We had a full day of snowboarding ahead of us. All morning, up and down the mountain, we had so much fun. And come lunchtime, we found our way to the lodge. And mind you, it was a Wednesday, just after the New Year. So it was mostly empty. But on the far side, sitting next to the window, was this beautiful girl with jet black hair. She was from our school. She was the prettiest girl in school. She was a senior, and we were in 8th grade. You know what that meant, right? We knew exactly who she was. And that also meant that she had no idea who we were. But I will never forget that face. It's crystal clear in my mind, etched in stone forever in my mind. Why? Because after lunch at the lodge, everything went dark. Everything went dark until I woke up from a coma more than 24 hours later in a hospital bed. I had my family by my bedside. I was completely bewildered, and I had this aching pain in my right leg. So what do? Ask, what happened? Why am I here? The only problem is, when I did that, nothing came out. I couldn't understand. I was trying to talk and Literally, words could not come out of my mouth. And over the next several days, I struggled to keep my eyes open for more than an hour every day. I struggled to eat the food that they brought me. I couldn't make sense of all the commotion over me being in this hospital bed with some pain in my right leg. How did I go from this super cool kid snowboarding down a mountain, looking at this pretty girl, dreaming of her, to being stuck in a bed, confined, unable to move, and trapped? As the seventh day approached, or as the seventh day came, I had gained some awareness. I had gained the ability to communicate a bit. So my parents came to my bedside and they explained it to me. They said, "Damien, you were involved in a very bad snowboarding accident. You were snowboarding at Powder Ridge with your friend Armand and you hit a tree. You broke your leg and you hit your head and you're going to be here in the hospital for a little while. And there's nothing I wanted more at that very moment than to be back in my normal life. Back at home, back with friends, back at school, believe it or not. But little did I know, normal would never be me." As day number 14 came, and I was fully aware, and I was eating and communicating, the doctors felt it was time to discharge me to go home. And thank goodness for this resident at the hospital. I believe his name was Dr. Gupta. He pulled my mom to the side, and he said, "If this were my son, I would not take him home. He needs to be tested, evaluated." You see, Dr. Gupta knew something was severely wrong. So on his suggestion, I spent the next 2 weeks at another hospital, being tested, being evaluated, and being diagnosed with traumatic brain injury. And I still remember the people from that second hospital so clearly. There was the mentally challenged teenager who was playing billiards with my brother in the game room. And we had to cut the game short because the lights were just way too bright for my eyes to handle. So I had to go back to my room, and I felt so bad for him. One, he was mentally challenged, and two, he just wanted a friend to play with. Then there's the paraplegic who sat next to me one day in a wheelchair while I sat in my wheelchair at lunch. And quite frankly, I was disgusted. I was disgusted by him because he couldn't talk, he couldn't feed himself, couldn't really move, his body was contorted. I was disgusted that I was in the same room, in the same situation as this helpless guy. And as the years passed, thankfully, I realized, shame on me. Shame on me for feeling that way about that guy who didn't choose to be there. Then there was a little boy, Danny, who was in a coma for 2 weeks. I was in a coma for 1 day. And on the 14th day, his parents brought his dog into his room, put the dog on the bed, and instantaneously, Danny woke up. Unbelievable story. It was such a big story that the local news rushed over to cover it, and I even found it described in detail in a book on Amazon. Then there was the guy in the room next to me, the 21-year-old guy who had suffered a catastrophic head injury. And on the day he was admitted to the hospital, the day where he needed the most support of his life, his girlfriend came to visit him. How pleasant, right? She broke up with him that day. In his moment of need, the one time that he really needed her, she ended it. Then there's the guy who was out partying all night and in the early hours of the morning dropped his girlfriend off at her house, and then on his way to his house, just 1 mile from his house, 1 mile, drove his car into a ditch, and now he's spending his life in a wheelchair. And then there's the nurse. The nurse who'd play billiards with me day after day, and on the night before I was discharged to go home, as I sat in my wheelchair, she leaned over and kissed me on the cheek. It was so pleasant. I will never forget it. I never got to see her again, but her love, it energized me, it inspired me. And as I look around the room at these people, with the exception of the nurse, we all had 3 things in common. We were all suffering a traumatic injury. In one way or another, we were all helpless. And not one of us had chosen to be there. Life brought us there. As I got discharged from that hospital, I was given a list of rules. Really, let's call them a list of limitations. And the list looked like this. Damien cannot listen and take notes at the same time. So give him teacher's notes. You can imagine all my friends were envious. Damien will most likely never speak or understand a second language. Damien can't play any more contact sports. No more soccer, no more lacrosse, no more sailing, and I even wonder if I should have been water skiing that coming summer. Soccer because you hit the ball with your head. Lacrosse because, well, it's very aggressive and a lot of fun. Sailing because the boom goes across the boat. And water skiing because, well, what if I fell? What if I fell and my head hit the ski? It'd be a disaster. Damien can't drink alcohol until he's 23 years old. Damien's mental processing time is slow. So be patient with him when interacting with him. And give him untimed tests. Another bonus. And Damien's 13, but his math and logic skills emulate that of a 19-year-old. So TBI affects everyone differently, traumatic brain injury. Some people forget how to speak, some people forget how to write, some people forget how to read. Some people become angry, others become frustrated or impatient, or a combination of all those. According to the CDC, in 2012, there were approximately 330,000 cases of either traumatic brain injury or concussion diagnosed in emergency rooms for children under 19 years of age. I don't know the breakdown between concussion and traumatic brain injury, but in many ways they're very similar. They're both head injuries. According to the CDC, in 2013, a study of people diagnosed with traumatic brain injury over the age of 16 that had received inpatient rehabilitation, after 5 years, roughly 50% were either dead or their lives had worsened. So the list said I would be different, and boy were they right. From 8th grade through 12th grade, every single time I lifted a pencil to write something down, every single time I opened my mouth to speak, every single time I opened my laptop to complete an assignment, it took me 2 to 3 times as much mental effort and as much actual time than it would take the average person. I'd come home from school and I'd sit at my desk for 4, 5, 6 hours a night when my friends would sit there for an hour, maybe an hour and a half. For me, words took longer to find, ideas took longer to express, concepts took a lot longer to make sense of. But I was 13, and I knew nothing other than to push and push and push. If you think back to your time in high school, just for a moment, imagine if every single thing you did in high school, everything, took 2 to 3 times as much mental effort and as much time as it actually did. What would that have meant for your high school experience? What would that mean for you today as an adult? Who would you be? Yeah, I was different. I am different. In fact, right now, if we can get a show of hands in the audience of anyone who might agree with that, I'd be very interested. And thank you. Thank you for that. But you know what? I'm here, I'm functioning, and I'm alive. As high school led to college, I decided in college, I didn't want pity. I didn't want to be a victim. I didn't want to be helpless. So I decided I would be successful. I sat through the SATs, untimed, and I painstakingly submitted my college applications. And I got accepted to Babson College, where I would study business. I was the first person at Hopkins School to use their new online software program for submitting college applications. And by the time I was done, I had a list about this long of ways that they could improve their software. How fortuitous, right? So during my 3.5 years at Babson College, only 2 professors knew of my situation. Remember, I didn't want to be a victim. I didn't want to be helpless. I didn't want the pity. In fact, my deficiencies and my limitations drove me forward. There was this one-time freshman year where I was taking a test, and by the time the class ended, I was only 60% done, maybe 70%. And thankfully, to my benefit, the professor, PJ, was familiar with my situation, and she had a very special warmth in her heart for it. So she invited me back to her office where I would finish the test, and as I sat down, I froze. I started crying. And I cried for minutes on end. Suddenly, this young, successful, budding entrepreneur who had so much inner strength and confidence was exposed. My world was crumbling. PJ walked me through it. I did well on the test. I did great in the class. But I vowed to myself at that moment never to let myself be in that situation again. 1年弱、日本の留学生として日本の神戸に住んでおりて、昆南大学で勉強しました。In other words, during 1 year of college, I studied in Kobe, Japan as a foreign exchange student at Konan University. And I lived with Miya Fuji-san, who didn't speak one word of English. And every day we ate breakfast together and dinner together, and we would talk. And I studied Japanese language and Japanese culture and Japanese business, and I started a business over there. And I made my way back to America, and in the coming years, I gathered all my resources. Resources from college, from Japan, from life, And with two very dedicated, diligent, and capable business partners, I built a business. A thriving, very successful software company here in Miami. And I'm an advisor to another groundbreaking software company. What are the chances? What are the odds? What's the likelihood that the kid who would be deficient and limited and would never do anything with his life would actually be successful? I learned to speak Spanish. I learned to speak Japanese, not fluently, but I can communicate, and I think that's what's important. And finally, I got to a point in my life where I could take a deep breath, where I could exhale slowly and catch up on some lost time. But the story doesn't end there. Ladies and gentlemen, I should be dead. I'm not saying I would like to be, but I should be. Shouldn't be here right now. It's July 2018, driving on I-95 in traffic, when suddenly this SUV comes barreling down the highway behind me, guys texting and driving. And I look in my rearview mirror as I'm talking to my sister on Bluetooth, and I count in my head, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, impact. His vehicle slammed into mine, and my body catapulted forward, and my head slammed into the back, slammed back into the headrest. And as if that weren't enough, 2-3 seconds later, the guy hits me again, and I catapult forward, and my head slams back into the headrest. To the hospital I go, this time for an evening, not for 30 days, this time not in a coma, not in a comatic state. And over the coming days, I would be tested and evaluated. And you guessed it, for the second time in my life, I was diagnosed with traumatic brain injury. You have any idea what it's like to fight your whole life an uphill battle? To finally get to a point where you can take a deep breath and get knocked down again? What are the chances of that happening? I'm so frustrated by it and so much pain. But there's only one option. Anytime you experience a traumatic event, or trauma, I should say, the only way to conquer it, to overcome it, to succeed, is to accept it and adapt. Get right back up and keep charging forward. You can't change the cards that you're dealt. But depending on the game, depending on the situation, you can make the cards work for you. I was thrown into this world where I find myself constantly scrambling to write things down. Because if 4 seconds pass, I know that that thought is gone. I was thrown into this world where I find myself constantly interrupting people on the phone. Not because that's proper phone etiquette. In fact, it's quite the contrary. But I know that if 3, 4, 5 seconds go by and I don't speak what's on my mind, the likelihood is I will forget what I was going to say. And the chances of it coming back are not that good. And I mean that. I was thrown into this world where if I'm having a conversation with someone, if someone's telling me something important, I'm I'm not talking about casual conversation. I'm talking about something important, and I'm sure many of you have seen this. I have to close my eyes so I can piece the words and the ideas together, try to make sense of them, and not be distracted by the eye contact, the person, or the space around us. It's horrible, and it's embarrassing, and I hate it, but it's the only way I can try to put things together. You see, what I lost was some intellectual capacity. What I lost was the ability to remember certain things. What I lost was the ability to follow and understand sequences. What I lost was the ability to show emotion in my face and in my smile. How many of you here tonight, or watching this video, take your basic, everyday freedoms for granted? Clearly, I am not a philosopher. I was not given the time to sit and think and ponder about the beauty of everyday life, about the beauty of every day. I was forced from a very young age to just appreciate the everyday because that's all I had. A walk with my dog in the grass, a simple motorcycle ride in the mountains, or an exciting ride in the mountains, or sitting by the creek and watching the water flow and listening to the sound that it makes. These simple things are the beauty, are the gift of every day. The simple idea of spending time with family and friends and loved ones. This is the beauty and the gift of every day. With my lower back pain after this car accident, I can't sit on a motorcycle. I don't know when I'll be able to, and that's just about my favorite thing to do. I can't jog to the mailbox to get the mail. I can't run. Think about that for a moment. Imagine if you ran 1 block and you'd have to spend the next day in bed. Not fun. I can't turn on a television or watch or look at a computer screen for more than a couple minutes without getting a headache and severe eye strain. I can't get a full night's sleep. I can't go outside in bright light for more than an hour, forget an hour, for more than 10, 15 minutes without suffering severe eye strain and getting a headache. I can't drive for more than an hour without those same things happening. And that's why the beauty of every day is everything else. Why do I say all this? What brings me here tonight? What I'm trying to impart to the audience, whether you're in a hospital bed right now or not, any day, any moment, any opportunity that you have to be free, make your own decisions, think for yourself, move about if that's available to you, is a day and a moment and an opportunity that you must take advantage of. Find what you like in life, find what you love, and pursue happiness. My life was gone in a split second, and then it came back. Miraculously and by chance, I am not dead. So I urge you today, think about your life. What can you do to live your life a little fuller, with a little more purpose? What can you do to help the world around us a little bit more? Simple things. Say hello to a stranger. Hold the door for a stranger. Adopt a dog. He'll probably become your best friend, like Hunter did. Second to Yvette. Stop your car in the middle of the street and walk a blind person across, or an old elderly person across. Or better yet, escort a blind person to a crowded train station, crowded and complicated, and see if you're able to hide the tears from that blind person that are rolling down your cheeks while you're doing it. These are things I've done, and these are things that I do frequently. I should be dead, but I survived so that I could be here on this stage to share my story and inspire others. If there's one person here tonight, or one person watching this video, who learns to embrace their freedom a little bit more, who learns how to live their life with a little more purpose, how to live their life a little fuller, then it's all been worth it. And especially if you're suffering from traumatic brain injury right now, if you feel helpless, if you feel incapable, if you feel deficient, limited, or my favorite, if you feel different, I want you to know that there is hope. There is hope for you, and there is hope for your future. And if you need to watch the video again and listen to my words and watch my face to understand that there's hope for you and for your future, please do so. But don't forget that there's hope. The next time you miss an exit, take a deep breath. Smile. Think of me. Wherever you go, wherever life takes you, wherever your path takes you, and most importantly, wherever you end up, the results will be profound. My name is Damien Rosen. My name is Damien Rosen, and I'm a survivor of traumatic brain injury. That's my story. That's my story, and this is my life.